We're going up and down, over and over. It's the same old thing. Up and down, over and under.
Matt, man, thank you for joining the show.
My pleasure, Ken.
I'm so pumped. We were just catching up before this. We actually met at Princeton on the cottage balustrade over a couple beers.
This couldn't sound more pretentious, could it? It was football weekend. Princeton was doing better with, I believe, the Crimson of Harvard.
Yeah, I think it actually was the Harvard game.
I actually think the game was going on while we were drinking. That's how compelling Ivy League sports in general are. I say this as an Ivy League athlete, so.
Absolutely. Well, and that's a good place to start because we were just catching up. You played Princeton, and you were just telling me it had a pretty remarkable end to your career.
Yeah, well, it really, I mean, technically it wasn't the end. It was sophomore year, but it was, I played baseball all 4 years. Sophomore year was the pinnacle. We won the league, the Eastern Intercontinental Baseball League, which was the Ivy plus Army and Navy. We got to go to the College World Series regionals. And I got to be on the mound for the clinching game against Dartmouth. Bob Bennett, who was their top guy. I think he was drafted. Had a complete game, like 1 run, three hits. And I got the game ball. And the coolest part was my dad, who, some of my first memories were playing catch in the backyard with my dad. He was always there, always throwing the ball, coaching baseball, and to be on the mound and to win the game, to get the game ball, walk over and hand it to my dad. And my dad still has that game ball, like in a pedestal, in a golden pedestal on his dresser. And it was cool.
I'm thinking of like the Sandlot signed ball with Babe Ruth.
You're killing me, Smalls. Yeah, I was going to say it was more like, Wonder Boy in The Natural, but yeah, probably more than Sandlot was appropriate for Ivy League baseball. It was great. And after that, I stunk. I couldn't throw a strike. I think I actually hold the record at Princeton for most walks, which my teammates, of course, pointed out to me because that's what friends do. They found the data a few years ago and sent that along. Like, look, you hold a record, not one you actually want to hold, but wild.
Notable nonetheless.
Yeah, notable. It's good to leave your mark in sports.
Yeah, exactly. Timeless. Well, in addition to your baseball background, what I didn't realize is that you were actually are a doctor.
Yes.
And so not only is
you'd never know meeting me. You wouldn't. You wouldn't. Yeah. So I after Princeton, I went to medical school at Columbia, New York, got my MD, graduated with honors, and by all accounts was a respectable young doctor. And I was doing my residency in Colorado when I just had an epiphany that my heart wasn't in it. And it was, I remember it was January 99. I was working in the intensive care unit. It was probably 2 a.m. We were getting slammed patient after patient. I think we had like 7 new admits, and I'm working them up. And I was with the second year who's like, hey man, you just got to start writing orders. You got to make some calls.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing it, I'm just thinking like, I didn't feel like I just didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. And I felt like, my God, people's lives are in my hand. And all I want to do is go home, sleep, play Nintendo 64 GoldenEye, or go skiing. And I just thought, I don't belong here. And it was just that realization that medicine isn't a job, it's a calling. And you don't do it as a 9 to 5. And I just realized my heart wasn't in it. And that was when I knew I got to reevaluate, because it wasn't good for my patients, but it wasn't good for me, because I didn't like the feeling going into the hospital feeling like I didn't belong, or that I wasn't 100% committed. It's a horrible feeling to feel like you're letting these people down with this sacred trust of they're putting their lives in your hand. So Absolutely. I decided to take a year off and reevaluate. And I thought, look, you just got to grow up. You're so immature. You just got to realize, become an adult, become a man, and be responsible and be a doctor. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to take a year off. I wanted to clear my mind. All I'd done was school and sports my whole life. Yeah. And so I thought, I want to do something creative, just clear my mind. And so I'd done stand-up a couple times with med school in New York. And I thought, I'm going to move out to LA. And instead of being a surf bum or touring the world, I'm going to do stand-up for a year, get it out of my system, grow up, and come back and be an adult. And instead, I got out to LA, and it was like 3 weeks in, maybe less, where I just knew this was what I was meant to do. Now, mind you, I'm going to open mics. If you don't know what an open mic is, it's where comedians go to work out. It's the gym. And you're sitting there with other comics, in coffee stores, in hookah joints, horrible, horrible show. These were terrible shows.
Right.
And I still fell in love with it. And I was lucky enough because of baseball, actually, because I had a friend who knew I was a baseball player. I got cast as a ringer on Drew Carey in an episode as a favor to a friend. And there I got a commercial agent. I got into commercials. So I was making 6 or 7 times what I was making as a resident within a few months.
Yeah.
And I was so happy. I didn't have a page. I didn't have real life responsibilities. I didn't life and death decisions weighing me down. Instead,
right.
I'm doing something where I thought, with medicine, I wanted to help people. And in comedy, it's obviously you're not saving lives, but at the same time, you're making them feel better. You're entertaining them. And I was just like this. I think this is why I wanted to go into medicine. Yeah. And I wish I would have realized before med school, it would have been cheaper, it was just kind of one of those epiphanies. And I was lucky enough. I was very lucky that I was young enough. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. So I could kind of take that risk. And the other thing, the biggest thing though, was that my parents were supportive because, the hardest part, once I had that epiphany, it took me 2 months to tell my dad. My dad is a world-renowned physician. He was a professor at the University of Colorado where I was training.
Oh, wow.
So and I think he saw me day to day and saw I wasn't happy, but I was terrified to tell him because I thought he's going to say, well, I'm going to say, listen, I got to take a break from medicine. I want to go try comedy and clear my mind. I thought my dad, if he'd said, you're crazy,
right?
You're not, you're going to stay a doctor and you're going to grow up. I don't think I would have left, but instead I tell him, I want to take a break. I want to go try stand up. I want to clear my brain. I'm not happy. And my dad said, the first thing he said, there's just this silence and, a couple seconds of silence after I told him, and he and my mom are sitting there. My dad says, life is short. Do what makes you happy. That's all your mom and I want. And my mom's like, yeah, go be happy. You've got your education. We believe it. And I think they probably thought he'll come back. Back. They probably regretted. They're like, oh, we'll give him a little line. He'll come back. And instead I got lucky. I fell in love with what I did. I had success and I never looked back. And I kept setting, when I came out, I also kind of set some criteria to stay. Cause I didn't want to just come out here 5 years later, be working as mopping floors or something, saying with an MD going, well, next year I'm going to make it. It was, look, financially, you have to start showing, supporting yourself, and you have to start seeing progress in your career. And I just kept exceeding the criteria I set. And so it just kept being easier and easier to stay. And I just kept falling more and more in love with what I was doing. And I think as I look around now, I love what I do. I love hosting American Ninja Warrior. I love hosting Live Rescue. I love doing stand-up comedy. I love getting to go on podcasts. It's ridiculous. It's so much fun doing something you love every day. And I feel so fortunate, particularly during these times, during this pandemic, that we found a way. We got to film Ninja Warrior during the pandemic. I'm shooting Live Rescue from my backyard. I set up a studio in my the old garage. Right. And I'm working, and I love what I do. And I see how lucky I am to get to do it, particularly because my friends who are doctors are literally on the front lines. Some of them have contracted COVID in the hospitals. Yeah. And I see the difference of, man, that what they do is so wonderful. I'm glad they are there, and I'm glad I am here.
Right. So, I mean, how difficult was it for you to make that decision to jump into comedy? Because I know you said you're worried about telling your dad, but I mean, that mental barrier to get over.
Yeah, Ken, I think it was, I sensed something, right? I sensed something wasn't right inside of me. There just was this incongruity of, I know, this is a sacred trust. I know there should be some more confidence. There should be some more passion here. So I'd sensed that for a while. And then, it was that January night where it dawned on me, like, my God, maybe I don't belong here. Not with the way I'm feeling. So I think that once that realization happened, it took 2 months for me to kind of come to grips with, I got to do something about it. And that was, telling my dad was really the first step. And it was 2 months of kind of agonizing over, can I just shoulder through? Can I just muscle through this and grow up? I think that was the toughest part, was to try to listen to what was coming from inside of me, and to listen to that and say, maybe there's another way, maybe there's something else. And it wasn't as though I was convinced it was comedy or entertainment. I didn't know that. I only done it a few times. I just felt like I want to try something totally different, just shake it up and just see what happens. And I stumbled into something that I just ended up loving. And that is fortunate. I think a lot of people spend their lives searching for it. I always say, like, you could have been the greatest violin player in the world, but maybe you never picked up a violin.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I look at it, I look at the way I was brought up, and I think, there was a value placed on excellence and success. And I don't feel like in a way that was oppressive, but it was just like, hey, do your best, try your hardest. And there were things that came naturally, or things that were kind of expected that you did. But I don't know that I always said, try everything. I didn't do entertainment. I didn't do the arts in school.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
I never did. And I think I'd always kind of, it's funny. I think there was a part of me. Look, I was a younger brother. I loved being the center of attention. Like on the sports teams, I would love, doing Rocky, against, going to come back. I would do like the whole 14th and 15th round act out.
Right.
Give Rambo speeches. So I liked performing, but I never saw it as something you would do. So I think there were signs all along. If you ask my friends, like, he's desperate for the spotlight. He clearly was meant to do this. I didn't see it though. So I think, I just look at people, and I think there was also, when we were growing up, it was, I think, hey, you work hard, you get a job, you go to college, get a job. At least a lot of my friends and I, that was kind of how we were raised. So I don't think it was, hey man, you don't have to have life figured out. You just get an education, improve your mind, and then experience things. Like that wasn't the approach. And I remember in college, particularly, it felt like everybody had it figured out, even though I don't think anyone really did. But nobody would talk about it. Everyone said, I'm going into finance, I'm going into politics, I'm doing econ, I'm getting a job on Wall Street, or I'm going to law school. Everyone seemed to figure it out. So to admit, like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I think that was hard. And I think people are better at that now, and being a little more open to, there's a balancing act of making sure you work hard to have those opportunities, but then taking some time to do it. And so I think I never really thought to look up. I was always kind of just grinding, not realizing where I was going, just reaching that next step. And so, I was lucky to kind of step off the treadmill and make this ridiculous career shift. And I'm amazed. I'm still, amazed that I did it. And I don't regret the path I took. I think it really helped shape me, and it gave me a really healthy appreciation and approach to Hollywood, having been in medicine where it truly is life and death, to be out here where we treat everything like it's life and death. And to have that perspective of, hey man, every show I'm doing, everything's going to get canceled. Everything's going to come to an end. I'm going to get fired. I'm not going to get things I want. And you're going to be okay. And you're going to realize this isn't life and death. And I think also having the discipline of having to do medical school and to work your ass off and to be able to handle grunt work and to be able to have people be brutally honest or, condescending to you and be able to handle it. Well, I think that really helped. The lessons of sport too, I think are so important.
No, absolutely. And that's actually something I was going to ask you is, going through that medical path, right? It's very regimented. There's a clear start and finish. There's like an order of how you get through it.
Yes.
Everything is tested, quantified, etc.
Yes.
How was the transition moving to something like stand-up comedy?
Well, it's
so
subjective,
wide open.
Art clearly is subjective. Entertainment is subjective, and yet the harder you work, the luckier you get. Right? That's absolutely true. And I think that there is something of the other thing too is what a marathon this is. So the very first hosting job I got was in 2004 on the E! Network. It was a show called Screenplay, a Fear Factor knockoff show. and I got to host it, and it tanked. It was dead after one season. But that job allowed me to meet this casting director, Annie Roberts, who then a home makeover show was going through a personnel change, and she said, "Hey, while we're casting someone permanently, just put Matt in. He's good on his feet. Put him in this show." I ended up being on that show for 5.5 years. We won a daytime Emmy. Yeah. That show led me to that same cast director got me Sports Soup, which is on Versus, which became NBC Sports, which was the sports version of the Soup. But that show directly was what the makers of Ninja Warrior saw me on that show, and they said, this is a perfect guy to host. So the very first gig I got in 2004 led to the job Ninja Warrior that I have today. And I think that's one of those lessons of it, but it led that way because I worked hard and people saw, okay, he's reliable, he's professional, he'll deliver, as much as he can if you like what he does. So I think that kind of discipline of medicine and that ability to say, to ride the highs and lows, and to grind, just to be able to put your nose down and really work hard, has served me, I think, well, and give me a reputation that has allowed me to work quite a lot with people I've worked with before, or people I've met and who wanted to work with me. And that's the other thing too, is having that patience of, you meet someone. I got to do a show called Evil Live on the History Channel, where Travis Pastrana recreated Evel Knievel's 3 biggest jumps live in Vegas. And I got to host it.
I remember watching that. Yeah.
And it's still one of my favorite gigs I've ever done. But I'd had a meeting 5 years before with the production company. And the guy said, I don't have anything right now, but I like you. I'll keep you in mind. 5 years later, he calls, and I get to go to Vegas and be front and center with Pastrana. And I got an Evel Knievel full leather suit. And it was just, it's those moments where you see, I think you need to have a little longer perspective in life and realize, hey, man, you always want to keep these relationships up. And just because something isn't right now or a year from now, be professional, be polite, be someone people want to work with, and good things will happen. You'll get a lot luckier that way. And I think that's been one of the things that has so far worked well for me. And I think that came from medicine was that idea of just work as hard as you can. And my parents, I think, always kind of instilled that.
Well, and that's so great to hear. And I think that's one of the things that I've kind of learned, in my own life. It's like, look, it's very easy to start talking about all the ways that you can accomplish something if you focus on the long-term end goal, right? Yeah. If it's like, hey, I want to be the host of a major TV show. I want to be an internationally known stand-up comedian. It's like, man, that seems so daunting, right? But rather, if you can kind of take this approach of, hey, look, I just got to take the one step. Who knows where this opportunity might lead? Who knows where that connection is going to come up a year or two down the road? I'm not going to say it feels more attainable, but it's kind of like, it's a little more encouraging. Like, so even with this, go ahead.
It is. And I think that's one of the things that I had goals early on. I thought I was going to be more of a sitcom actor. I thought I was so hilarious, and things went a different way. And I was, I got into hosting, and I ended up being like, wow, I like getting to be myself, and getting to do that. And so I think, I think there is, you control what you can control. And so I've been, the things you can control are really working hard and trying to be professional when you get opportunities. And the other thing that I've done is I've said yes to a lot of things. And some things were things that didn't pay, or things that seemingly had no future, but they were with people I liked, or people I respected, or people who I wanted to build a relationship with. Because I think there is also, a lot of people have confidence in their abilities. Yeah. But there are a lot of super talented people out here. And so if you're waiting for people to discover you, there are other people out there just as talented who are busting their ass, knocking down doors or making connections. Yeah. And so it's one of those things, I think the more you put yourself out there and let people know what you do, the more people are aware of you. And I think that everything to a certain extent is a numbers game of trying to get as many opportunities, as many swings at the plate as you can get. And hoping that you find the right one and that you can hit it out of the park. And that's one of the things I've always felt like is put me in a room. If people are looking for what I can do, I believe I can sell myself better than anyone. So just get me in front of them, however it is. And hopefully I I will take whatever happens if I get my chance at the plate. And if they don't like it, then they weren't going to buy me. But if they want me, I'm giving them all.
Yeah, they're getting 100% of it.
That's it. Yeah.
Did you experience good initial traction, or were there years, like you said, of grinding it out?
I mean, look,
I
got very lucky early on in that I was successful in commercials, and commercials were so lucrative at the time that it allowed me to, because on TV, again, my first hosting gig took 5 years. So I was doing things. I got to be on General Hospital. I got to have little parts on sitcoms. And my stand-up was going, I was headlining, but headlining very small clubs.
Okay.
The commercials financially made it viable. And that's the other thing too, is, you to find a way to be patient in some areas that it takes a little longer to get to that point. So to have some other stream where it's like, look, commercials are fickle, but I was lucky to do it. You don't become famous from it. You don't necessarily build a career off of it, but it was enough to sustain me until my hosting career really started going.
Yeah, it can float the acting habit. Or
exactly.
the comedy habit. Yeah,
that's it. And I've seen that a lot. That look, you always hear about the overnight success, but that is rare. I think it's most of the people I see. It's about 10 years. 5 at the earliest, but 10 years of really working at your craft until you're good enough to where when you get that opportunity, not only can you convert, you can knock it out of the park and keep working. Because a lot of people get the opportunity too early before they're ready.
Right.
And sometimes I always said, like, if they're like, we don't have something now, I was okay with that, because it give me another year where I'm going to keep working and getting better. Because when I go through there, I always thought of Ted Danson, Sam Malone on Cheers, where he said, good hair opens a door, great hair blows it off the hinges. I always thought when I got an opportunity, I wanted to knock it out of the park. I wanted them to go, where have you been? Because the worst thing was to be in there and have them go, that was fine. That was fine. That was forgettably fine. I wanted to be like, if you give me an opportunity, I am going to make the most out of it so that people remembered and wanted to work with me again, which is why it gave me a little patience. And again, I had the patience because financially I was making money with the commercials. And if that if you're working hard and you believe you're getting better, and I think you also have to be an honest appraiser of your own work. And, with comedy, it was great. And with the iPhone now, it's so easy to not only audio tape, but to videotape and to watch your work and be like, oh, whoa, I stunk.
Yeah.
I stunk. That's got to get better. And to do that. And so, I still will watch most episodes of Ninja Warrior. I was watching last night, watching the show, going, all right, is there something I would have done differently? Is there anything I could have done better? And you're always just trying to, keep improving.
So you're still constantly critiquing, even Ninja
Not
Warrior,
as much. I think because there reaches a point where it gets hard to watch yourself because you just start watching all the bad stuff. But I still will, and especially when I'm gearing up, for something different.
Yeah.
And so we're back doing live rescue now on A&E, and it's a live show, and it's a dance because we are live for 2 hours Friday and Saturday night, and I've got producers in my ear, I've got program, I've got my other hosts. We're all working remotely, so the audio is real time, but the video lags, so you're really having to listen.
Wow. People
are in your ear, and I love it. I love it because you feel like, man, I am on a tightrope. And you got to be focused. And I love that energy. And sometimes, you get things wrong, you drop it. And all right, how could I do it better? And it's really fun, just feeling like I'm getting better and better at the live element of it, and just managing it. And just sometimes I'll start a sentence not knowing where we're going, just trusting a producer's going to come in as I'm talking and give me something else. So you'll be able to hear it and spit it out. And it's really fun when you get to that point of I likened it that I first noticed it in stand-up.
Okay.
Where when you start out in stand-up, it is just a panic. When you're on the stage, your heart is pounding and you're just trying to get the words out. But when you start to get to a point 5, maybe 10 years in, where you really are confident, everything slows down. And I always liken it to what I heard from Michael Jordan, where he just said, it slowed down in the basketball, that basket would get 3 sizes bigger. In stand-up, everything slows down. You're telling your joke. You're really present to it. But you're seeing people in the crowd. You're noticing how they're reacting. You're thinking about 3 or 4 things at once, and yet you feel so present. You're so in the zone when you're confident, when you're really at your best. And that's when you know, like, all right, all this work is paying off. And I feel like when I'm on Ninja or now with Live Rescue, it's starting to slow down where you start to feel that. And you get there because you work very, very hard at it. And it's really gratifying to be in a position when you walk in and you go, I know I can do this. I know I am good at this. And so to walk in and feel like I can give you a very good, I can do this very well. And if you're looking for me, I think I can do me better than anyone.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to walk in with that confidence and to feel like, man, I'm not hoping I have a good day. I know I'm going to have a good day because I've worked for now 20 years between stand-up and medicine and hosting, all these things, all these skills that kind of come together. And that's the other thing is, like, I took acting classes for 10 years and I barely acted, but it really helped me listen. It really helped me develop other skills. And I so often liken it to sports where we talked about cross training and working on basketball for footwork will help your football, will help your baseball.
Yeah.
And I think with anything, obviously in entertainment, it's for sure true, but I see that cross training, that developing different skill sets makes you much stronger and in ways you might not predict. And so that's why I love doing different things and different challenges and still doing stand-up. The idea of stand-up when you're out there with just your words for 45 minutes in a crowd that you have no idea what they're thinking or what's going to happen, that idea of being present and keeping your mind really attuned. I think stand-up is phenomenal for really making your mind be present and just being in this moment. And the way you do that is by preparing a whole bunch before then so you can just throw it out and be present right then in the moment.
So that's something that I wanted to ask you because, especially your most recent show with Rescue, right? I think someone from the outside would say, oh, like you just have to be someone who's so quick on their feet. You have to be a great improviser. And a lot of people I would imagine would have thought like that's just something you're born with. But what I'm hearing from you is, no, it's something that I've worked at, but it's also been like 20 years of all these different experiences and cross training that has kind of enabled you.
100%. Even in medicine, we used to have, to present patients. And so you'd have to memorize a whole bunch of information, understand what you were talking about and be able to handle questions. So even then that was kind of training me for it. But for sure, having done stand-up, I think was phenomenal training for being ready to do live TV, for being able to handle a mistake. Because with stand-up, when you bomb, when jokes go bad, you panic. And then you get to a point where it's like, hey, it's okay. When I can handle it, because the crowd doesn't mind if a joke bombs. If you don't get nervous, if you're still confident and you can turn it around, acknowledge it, and do it, and to not panic in those moments. And I think stand-up teaches you that, is how to handle that, how to handle when things go wrong. And so with everything, you're always working and again, there are people who are naturals, but for most of us, we worked really hard to get good at what we do. And, again, it's hosting. It seems like all you're doing is talking, but just having those experiences and having that ability to listen to people in different ears and still be speaking, a third train of thought. And that comes with practicing kind of doing it. And so, in whatever you do, I think getting reps makes you better. Yeah. So that's why I would still do stand-up shows, even if it's, 7 people, or, we did some at the Laugh Factory during the pandemic where there were 0 people. They just put a phone in there. They were live streaming and you're like, I'm doing stand-up. And I can't tell. I'm not even seeing like emojis.
0 feedback.
I might as well be in my mirror. Yeah. But you do it and you do all these different things and it's fun. And at a certain point, it's like, man, if you love doing this, and I love performing, then all of it is fun in different ways. And so I think it really is taking these opportunities to kind of push yourself a little out of your comfort zone into areas where you think, hey, this is a skill I might need to develop, and working on it. And you take as many opportunities to work on it as you can. And you get better. You really do. When you put the time in, you get better.
Yeah. Well, and you've done so many different shows. You've been hosting now for so long. You've had the stand-up. One thing I'd be interested to hear from your perspective, and I feel like you may have even started to answer this already, is like, do you still get nervous the way you used to? Do you still
sometimes? It depends. It depends. Certain things will get me. Live performances, because you just never know what a crowd is going to do, and And there are certain times where you think, oh God, you still go out there, and there are times when it just goes sideways and you're just bombing and the sweat is coming down and you're going, I just want this to end. 30 more minutes. Oh my God.
Right.
Just did 29 more minutes. Yeah. But honestly, I think now, one of the things you also start to do is to say, all right, that nerves, that's also like excitement, right? That means I'm excited to do this, and you get better at handling it. But yeah, there's still times when, man, yeah, my heart's in my throat. It's like Eminem vomiting mom's spaghetti, but not as much. I don't get as nervous, and particularly in situations where I'm comfortable on Ninja or Live Rescue. For the most part, I'm like, okay, there's not much they're going to throw at me where I haven't, don't have some idea of how to handle it. But
just all those reps. Yeah,
and it is, and at a certain point, the other thing too that makes you nervous is when you feel like this is my shot. This is the one shot. And I think I've been out here long enough to realize rarely do you get one shot. Rarely is there one moment where your career will be made or broken. You tend to get a lot of little shots, and you don't always know which one's going to be the one. But like there've been auditions for shows where I went into host and I walked out and I just went, I tanked it. I didn't do what I want to do. I felt it. They felt it. There were times where I just wanted to go in the middle, like, I just want to stop and save all our time. Right. You plow through, and then there were other times, where more and more you get better. But I think that, again, it just comes to the point where you start to, when you've had enough experience in those moments and you've come out the other side, you start to build confidence that you're like, okay, I'll survive this. I think I think I can get through this.
Well, and I love this idea of cross training, and I feel like it's pretty evident when I look at your background.
Yeah,
I mean, right now, just the number of things you have going on. You have a podcast, right? The Factorious
Game Show Podcast. Factorious, it's a blast.
Awesome,
love it.
You've got that. You have Ninja. You have Rescue. I'm sure there's other things I don't even know about.
I'm a regular contestant on 25 words or less, where I get to play word games, which I love games. So look, I'm right now, I'm busy. It looks like I'm going to be doing some stuff for the Olympics. It was supposed to be obviously this year, but next year it's going to have a nice role with the Olympics, doing some live streaming stuff. Cool. Yeah. Can't wait for it. And, so work is great. And, at the same time though, it could all go away in a matter of months. Shows get canceled, viewing habits change. So the other thing you're always doing is saying, all right, well, what could be next? Yeah. What would the next opportunity be? What other connections do I have? I love what I'm doing. I think Ninja Warrior hopefully has a lot more years in it. But you never know. And so that is one of it's an interesting, I think, as we've seen, particularly in 2008 when the market crashed, and then more recently with this pandemic, entertainment has always been obviously a very fickle career where things change in not years, months, sometimes weeks or days. Yeah. And we've learned to kind of live with that. But I think what I've seen in other careers, and even somewhat in medicine, is you realize things that we used to think, if you're in finance, if you're at Bear Stearns, that's not going anywhere. And then you see 2008 happens and a bank that's over 100 years old disappears in a matter of days. Yeah. So I think I was really glad to say I didn't choose a career for stability and I didn't choose a path that said I'm choosing this career, even though I don't like it as much, because I know it's stable. I know I'll always have a career there. Instead, I chose something that I was passionate about. And while it's, it seems to be more fickle, what I've realized is in life, if you're going to bet on something, I decided I would rather bet on myself. Yep. And in entertainment, that's what you're doing. You're betting on yourself that you will be able to find the next opportunity, that you'll be able to create the next opportunity, that you'll be able to land on your feet. And I think ultimately you see, even all of us really are. It's just, to different degrees, because so many things that we take for certain we're realizing aren't. So, I think that was one of the things when I'm really glad that early on I decided to do something I loved, because I would rather kind of take my swings doing what I love and betting on myself than, choosing a path where I just kind of was grinding, saying, this is a stable career, but I'm miserable. Yep. But in the end, it'll be safe. I'm glad I chose this path.
Yeah. And I can relate to that in some ways. And it's funny to look back. So, I was telling you beforehand, my first job, I was working in marketing. I must have been making $35,000 and living in New York City. So I was broke the fourth week of every month.
Less than broke, right?
And when I say broke, I mean, I was below the poverty line, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, someone's going to write me a nasty note saying that's not true.
Yeah.
But I mean, dollar
New York
pizza,
is a very expensive city.
I mean, I was living behind fake bookshelves with a comedian, no less, in a living room. And, but the reason I bring that up is even at that time, there was other things that I thought I was passionate about. But to make that jump into something else, I was like, oh man, but I have the security of this job. Yeah. It's stable. There's a clear cut path to where I will be doing well someday. I don't know. And I mean, I stayed there for 3 years. Yeah. By the way, my in-laws listen to this, and I was courting my now wife at this time. They're gonna be like, you made $35,000
and you walked away from it? You're crazy.
Yeah. They're gonna be like, what a web of lies you were spinning. But that jump, I really think it's important to say is like, it's such a hard decision to make for so many people because that risk feels really substantial, right? So it's very cool to hear, what I mean, your perspective and how well it's worked out. Yeah.
Look, I was 27 at the time. I knew my parents would take me back and I could go back to medicine, and I didn't have a family and kids. So it was a little easier. I knew, this really wasn't like fall on your face. I knew there was still like a soft landing. So, it wasn't, it was a tough decision. And certainly walking away from medicine, all my friends who knew me were like, hey, you're not that funny. What are you doing? They were like, dude, you're like our 17th funniest friend. You think you're going to be a comedian? Right. But I think, pretty soon, I think they saw, God, how much I changed when I was doing something I loved and how much happier I was. And that, I think that brings out a passion and a willingness to work in ways that you might not have done for something where you're, just nose to the grindstone for something you don't love. Yeah. So I think I was, lucky to find, I gambled on finding something that I loved. And I think that is true. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. The work for me with my job is not the job. It's getting the job. It's the in between. But when we get to work, it is awesome. It is a blessing.
Yeah. Well, and you said, one of the things that's really helped you today, especially, with just, I imagine, the longevity of American Ninja Warrior and then all the other projects you're working on, is that you really do focus on preparation. And some people might be a little surprised to hear that. Can you talk a little bit about that profile?
It is like,
I've been watching Matt. He does not prepare. No, it's,
people say I always do my homework. There's just like, hey man, if there's work you can do to make it easier on the day of, do the work. I'll watch videos of every competitor who's going to run. We'll know the submission videos. I'll have read their bios. I follow them online. Like you learn their stories. You learn about these people. You learn about the obstacles. You walk the course with our stunt guys, with our testers, and hear the challenge of these obstacles. And you just gather this information, and just so you want to just have an abundance of resources, an abundance of preparation to rely on. And honestly, this was something that I learned in an acting class that I thought was the best advice. That like she always said, acting is 100% technical and 100% organic. So she would say, you have to do the work. You have to know this scene backwards and forwards, know the words, know the storyline, know the beats. And then when you start, you throw it all out. You trust that the work is there and you just be present. And it is one of those things you see, like, again, that's what I talked about with stand-up, is when you are able to be present on something and just focus on it and be in the moment and not be thinking, what's my line? But to know I've done the work. Yeah. Everything, the homework is all there. I don't have to be looking for data. The hay is in the barn. And then all you have to do is be present and trust that your skills are there. And I think that is one of those things where when you're going in for a job interview, you don't glance at some, go, who am I interviewing with? Oh, his name's Steve. What, where did he go to school? What does he like? What does this company focus on? What are the questions they might ask me? Mm-hmm. And like, it's one of those things they might not ask you. But when you go in there prepared, I think you have a different level of confidence. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready for what they're going to throw at me. Absolutely. And I'm ready for why I am here and what I am doing. And I think that just by controlling the variables you can control, you give yourself that self-assuredness, you give yourself that confidence that allows you to be able to perform your best when it counts. And it's those people of, Jordan, why do I succeed? Because I failed, because I took all those shots, because I practiced in the gym. And it's putting that time in so that when the moment comes, you're ready. You're ready to take your swing.
Yeah. And this has come up a couple of times already, this, the need and the importance of being present. And maybe I'm asking this because I just had on a sports hypnotist and then someone who focuses on meditation. But do you have any sort of practices that you leverage to like focus and kind of work on being more present? Or is it just something that's organically developed?
I think it really is, I've done some meditation and I think that there is, breathing is always like controlling your breathing is one of those things that I think is something that we often don't focus on. And when you get those short, quick breaths, when you're a little more nervous, that's an easy thing where you can say, I can consciously control my breath and slow it down. And in so doing, I think you slow your thinking down. You speed your mind up. So it feels like it's slowing down. Yeah. And I think honestly, I've noticed in this video game, the game show I play, 25 Words or Less. Yeah. Right before I go, I lean back, I just take a breath and I lean in and just stare at the person. And it's one of those things of just trying to open up your mind going, all right, I've done everything I can. I'm just trying to be present. And I am not a Zen Buddhist. I am not present most of the time. I spend way too much time on my phone looking at social media, just abolishing my brain, short attention span. I listen to podcasts at night. I do everything wrong. I'm trying to get better. I am a work very much in progress. But I really do see it. You see it where the more you kind of control it on a day-to-day basis, the better your brain is, the more prepared you are. And again, full caveat, for full admission, I don't always do it the best I could. Right. But it's one of those things where I think when it comes time for something big, when it comes time for being ready for something, that is something I'll try to do, is just kind of like put the phone down, stop looking at things, and just, take a couple breaths beforehand. And you're just like, at that point, if you've done the work and you believe in yourself, there's just a little bit of, all right, this is the moment. This is what I wanted. This is the moment. Let's go make it happen.
When you walk into something with doubt, right? Which I think is often what happens when you feel unprepared. Yeah. Like you're already fighting an uphill battle. And so it's just that idea of like the preparation, knowing that you've done everything that you possibly could. Yeah. In a strange way, it just enables you to be more free in the moment.
It does. And one of the things too that I found liberating once or a couple times has been when I thought, I'm not right for this. I don't think I'm what they're looking for. And I thought I could try to be someone I'm not and be who I think they want. And instead I said, I don't think I can do that well enough. I would rather go in and be 100% me and say, you're not right for this, but we see what you are right for, and we'll keep that in mind. And so I think there's, and it's not like going in and going, we want someone sensitive. You're like, well, screw you. But it's this idea of I would knowing what you're good at. And even sometimes if it's like, hey, I know you're looking for something else, but I'm going to try to figure out a way to show you what I'm good at within the context of that. And there is a certain amount of liberty of saying, all right, I'm not getting this. So let me just go do what I can and be the best me that I can. And that's really a fun place to be. That often, again, sometimes you don't get a call or they'll just stop in the middle. They go, yeah, I don't know what you were thinking. But then other times you're like, hey, I like that. And I think that's one of those things when you realize, not being too precious about one opportunity being it. And again, I've had shows where I thought this show is the one that if this goes, my life changes. And then nothing ever happened. Ninja Warrior, they came to me and they said, look, this show's probably 10 episodes for the summer. Maybe we get through them. Maybe we don't. And now we're on season 12. We've been nominated for Emmys. We've had spinoff shows. You just don't, you don't always know what's going to be that golden goose. You don't know what's going to be that opportunity that is. So kind of treating them all, and giving them all your best, but not making one seem like this, I've just, there'll always be another chance. If you believe you're good at what you do, if you work hard, you'll get another opportunity.
Yeah.
And just, but making the most of every opportunity you get and trying to, give them a full sense of, hey, if this is what you're looking for, this is what I can deliver.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Did you always have that perspective with regards to,
no.
I guess
No. I used to think, every
rejection?
audition, I lived and died with it. I used to be like, call my agent the next day. Did they give any feedback? And here's the thing. You only get feedback if you get it. If you don't, they just don't call.
Right.
And so it'd be miserable. And then sometimes there'd be like 3 weeks and they're like, oh yeah, you're moving on. And you're like, oh, they didn't call it. And then you start to go, I call it fire and forget, like, a missile. You just fire. You just, at a certain point, you go in, you do the best you can. And that was another thing I learned is like, when you go into an audition or a job interview, your job isn't to book the show. You can't control that. All you can control is doing the best you can, because there's so many, and it's been interesting because I've been on the other side now and casting and seeing people, and sometimes you realize the best person doesn't always get the job. There are other factors. There can be other things at play. So you could go in there and you really could hit a home run and they could go, we love this guy. We're going to find something, but not this. And you think they didn't call me, they hate me. And it's one of those things of, and it's tough when you're starting out, but when you get to a place where you go, listen, I'm working, I have worked, I will work. And I believe that I can make fans when I go out and do this. And so that's all I'm doing. And when I leave, hey, thank you for the opportunity. Hope to hear from you. If not, great. And to move on and then to in your life, just say, I'm turning the page on that. And if something comes of it, great. But to focus on controlling what you can control, because it's so easy to get mired in things that really are beyond your control. And I still do it at times, but it's you get enough perspective when you've been in it. I'm 2 decades in now, where you see like, wow, everything will kind of come full circle and take care of itself as you take care of your business.
Yeah, it's again, easier said than done, but I feel like that in itself is really inspiring. Right.
Well, I think it's helpful. Like initially I would track everything and track auditions and track like how I did or how I thought I did. I would track comedy shows. And that's really helpful initially, because, the thing you want to see though is not, did I book it or not? Obviously that helps, but you want to see like, did I do what I wanted to do? And when you start doing that, then you start to see things fall into place, I think. And so it's again, kind of focusing on, hey, when I'm going in there and I feel like I'm knocking the ball, deep, maybe not out of the park, but it's going deep.
Yeah.
Then it's like, all right, I feel like I'm doing what I can do. Then it's in their part, And I always felt too, people sense desperation. We know it in comedy. When you're panicking, the crowd senses it and they turn and they stop laughing. But when you're confident, when you know, like, I don't need this, something else will come. When you believe that, I think you go in there with a different confidence, as opposed to, if I don't get this, I'm not paying my rent. I'm going to be out on the streets. And, it's possible to be there. And there is that ability of, if you have that ability to have that confidence to say, I believe in myself, I'm betting on myself, this will work out. I think your performances start to get better. Your opportunities will start to, I think you'll start to see more success.
And what that makes me think of too is like, you can't live and die with every outcome. Like you can't, you said as much, like you can't measure success based on whether or not you got the job, because unbeknownst to you, there could be a completely different set of factors.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And someone's nephew also is interviewing for the role.
Yes. Now, again, I say this, and one of the things in comedy is you have to be a candid assessor of your own skills. You have to know, hey, did I suck tonight, or was that a rough crowd? And it's the same with your performances, where you have to be able to kind of gauge, no, I think I was pretty good. I just think if they don't go for me, they weren't looking for me. Versus, oh boy, I could have done better. I need to, next opportunity, I need to prepare better. And I think once, you start to be a better judge of it, the more with reps, the more times you perform, the more times you're around other people, the more interviews you do, the more auditions you do, the more stand-up you do, you start to see and to become a better gauge of your own work. And I think that is a very valuable tool to have, is to know when you're doing good work and when your work could be better.
Yeah. It's funny. I mentioned that I lived with a stand-up comedian when I was in New York, Noah Savage. He's now a announcer for ESPN.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, of course. Princeton basketball.
Oh,
player.
you don't
Yeah,
know? Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, he ran one of our reunions. I think he drank more than we
perfect.
did. He was
No,
good.
that actually sounds about right.
Yeah.
But I would go with Noah to all these open mics, and I'd just go to support him, and it was also fun, and the beers were cheap, and I didn't have a whole lot to spend at that time.
Yeah.
And, I would see some of these guys would come to the same shows and they would not adapt. Like they were not assessing their material. They had all the confidence in the world, but they were like, look, I'm just going to use this bit until someone finds it funny. And it's like, that's the other side of the equation, right? It's that willingness to be able to actually say, hey, assess what you're doing and be willing to critique yourself and adapt.
And it's helpful to see that. It's helpful to see it in others and then hold the mirror up to yourself and say, am I doing that?
Yeah.
And you do. And you see that you start to see the habits of, hey, here was a guy who was with us at these open mics, but now he's getting booked. What is he doing differently? What are the people around him? When I go to those shows, what's the difference with how much they're churning out new material or how they're adapting to the crowd? And it's being candid in your ability to assess what's going on and not being afraid sometimes to call yourself out or to say, I'm not doing what I need to do.
Right. One of the things I have to ask you, your relationship with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Okay. So after I was looking up the cast of characters that were assembled for that new Celebrity Apprentice. I'm going to go back and watch that entire season because
I think they buried it because of the executive producer. NBC has cut ties with it.
Oh, got it.
But I still have them on my DVR. Believe me.
I was like Boy George, Vince Neil, Lisa Leslie. I was like, this is amazing.
Brooke Burke, Snooki, Chael Sonnen, Eric Dickerson, Ricky Williams. Honestly, like if entertainment went away, if I had to go back to whatever, leave town and go back, and if people said, well, what was the highlight? It was that. It was getting to do the new Celebrity Apprentice and winning, but more importantly, after that, becoming friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger, because it was one of those things. So, we filmed the show in 2016. And that was when our president was, he was just vying for the nomination. Nobody knew. And over the course of it, we shot the show. We're about to put it out. And then he gets the nomination, then, wins the election. And we start airing just around his inauguration. And it was a very politicized time. So the show became a hot football. NBC kind of buried it. And I was disappointed because I thought, hey, man, it was so much fun. That show, to me, was the culmination of everything I had done in my life. To get to go on this show as probably the least known person and to be around all these celebs who I was huge fans of and to get to go in there and to be working with, we're working with Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. We're Warren Buffett. Jessica Alba's coming in with her Honest company. Like you're working with billion-dollar brands and having these unbelievable opportunities, meeting people and getting in front of decision makers. And I'm getting to show week after week, like different areas where I could excel and have fun. And I got to do Harry Potter. And I turns out I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd. Nobody else knew Harry Potter. and I get to do this ridiculous performance. And later I found out Arnold Schwarzenegger was like, I saw you in there. I was like, this guy's got some magic. I'm like, I see what you're doing. And it was just unbelievable opportunity where I felt like everything I'd done between medicine, between stand-up, between sports, between hosting, all of it got called into play. And even like the way my mom raised me to be nice to people and not to lose my shit when people are calling me out or sabotaging me. It all came into play and I got to win. I got to win and win $1 million for the Arthritis Foundation. Yeah. And I remember afterwards when the show didn't do well and people weren't watching and I was like, oh my God, I thought it was going to be great. My buddy goes, wait a second, where are you going this way? I was like, well, I'm going to Arnold's house for his birthday. He goes, you're friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is the guy we grew up watching. You have the Predator poster on your childhood bedroom. You've had it there since '86. Like you won. You became friends with your legend. And I'm like, yeah. So this past year for my birthday,
perspective.
He took me to Austria. He wanted me to help host an event for the Schwarzenegger Climate Initiative. So we land in Austria. We go to a club. He brings out a cake. He sings happy birthday to me. We're on stage that night. And I'm like, and then we go to this Hahnenkamp, this downhill race. And he and I are hanging out where we're having stogies. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like this, when I grew up, entertainment was never on my radar.
Yeah.
I watched movies. I loved them. And now here I am with this guy who defined the 80s for me. And it happened because I made this ridiculous career switch and the opportunities I've gotten, the things I've gotten to do and see, and the people I've met with him and because of him and the difference we've got to make in charities together. I've worked with him. We've raised over $10 million for charity. And it's just amazing when I look at how this all came from that one decision to kind of leave medicine and pursue this dream, and how fitting it was that this guy who I grew up worshiping with posters on my wall, and now I got to become friends with him. And it was just one of those things of, man, your dreams, like, it's amazing how these dreams can come true in ways you never expected. And the fun, like, every time I'm with him, I'm still like, I don't know, you know, I got this. Oh, they can't see it. I've got a photo from his Christmas party. Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and me, and Arnold's Iseman community. He brought me over to Stallone because he knew. And I got a photo with like these two guys. I'm just like, this is the kind of stuff that I will, when I'm old and gray and can't remember anything, I'll remember that. I'll remember getting to do some of this stuff. And it was amazing. And I was so glad that, you know, when I got to go on Apprentice, my goal was don't get fired the first week. But I read his book and he's like, I want someone who takes risks. I want someone who doesn't apologize, but who's willing to work hard, who will put themselves out there, who will, you know, be willing to fall on their face. And I was like, I took those lessons and I applied them and I ended up winning. And it was, you know, making a huge difference for charity. And it's just been this transformative experience having a friendship with him. And it really, being around someone like him, who I've never met anyone with such a vision and such a willingness to make it happen, and a refusal to take no for an answer, where I just see this man, the people he brings into his orbit to this day, heads of state, you know, billionaires, princes, there's no question he is still the biggest man in any room. And to watch his ability to make things happen and to make people want to be with someone who has this unbelievably positive, confident attitude, who wants to make things better, make things work. And to see how the power of his vision is constant, and to be able to hear him talk about that, and to talk when he talks to people who are leaders, and to say, he's not confident, there's no clear vision, and to see him be able to, like, just immediately dissect it and to choose people who he knows have a vision, who can help him execute his vision. And he's someone who just believes in these synergies. And it is amazing to watch a guy who's had success in bodybuilding, in real estate, and being an entrepreneur, in being a governor, and being a movie star, and now being a philanthropist and a world policymaker, and to have success in so many different realms, and to have it all come down to this undeniable will and vision. And to watch that, it's like going to business school anytime I'm around him. And I love it. It's one of those things where when you can be around those people who've achieved extraordinary things and just soak it up, it's like, man, that is going to graduate school. That is being around that gets you so excited. And that's, you know, one of those opportunities where if you ever get a chance to be around people who are at the pinnacle of their career, whether you agree with them, whether you like what they've done or not, to not take that opportunity to try to say what makes them tick. Why have they had this extraordinary success? You know, I think that was always kind of the thing with athletes, like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, just to watch this guy's single-minded dedication to victory, and how above all else. And when you're like, man, you know, I didn't have that in sports. I did not. I wasn't even close. And you see what it takes to be the greatest. And you know, and that's the other thing too, is some people will look at that and say, I'm not willing to pay that price. Right. I'm not willing to do what he did. Do that. And you know, there is always a calculus of, hey, I want to have a life, whatever. But I think, you know, when you can be around those people and see, it really is amazing. And that was, you know, one of the great things too, was to be able to talk, like, you know, get to spend 3 hours with Steve Ballmer, and there were times he was just shitting on me. And I was like, okay, I'm taking that feedback, because you're worth $25 billion and I'm going to listen to what you have to say.
Probably a thing or two I can learn here. Yeah.
And it's one of those things when you can just take your ego out of it and say, I'm going to listen to what they say. And it's, you know, those opportunities are, you know, and they've only come in the past few years, but when you can be around people who are super successful, it really is fascinating to be able to just soak it in and see how they approach things differently.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, like this story almost feels like it encompasses a lot of the things that we talked about earlier, right? It's like, you never know where an opportunity is going to lead, right?
Yes.
Like one step could open up so many doors you couldn't even have imagined.
100%.
But also what I heard in there too is, I hope people didn't miss it. It's like prior to you going on that show, like you read his book. You did the homework on like, hey, what does this guy look for? What makes him tick? Like, I just think
they didn't see, that was one of the things that you don't see on the show was I'd gotten some advice that, so, when you see the show, they give you a task and then you try to execute a task for a brand. Right. What they don't show is after that task, they give you a book, like a 30-page book that has all these details, deadlines, that has resources, that has the rules, that has the criteria. And so one of the things I would do is we would usually get it, sometimes you'd have a hint, like we knew, like, okay, Warren Buffett was going to be on the show. We knew that. Yeah. So I was reading his books. I was researching him. I knew Ballmer was going to be on. So I'm researching Microsoft. I'm researching the Clippers so that I had as much information ready to go. I obviously researched Schwarzenegger and the things that he valued. And so when I would go in, and the other thing is I would take that book and every week, every task, I was the one who said, I will go through all of this. I will process it. I will create charts. I will do so because I may not be valuable if it's a makeup task or if it's a creative arts one. But I knew I could always add value by being the person who will work hard, who will keep us organized, who will do just the grunt work. Yeah. Because I was like medicine. I'm like, that's scout work. That was the stuff that, hey, you just got to do this paperwork. You got to work hard. I'm like, I can do that. I can do that every week. And so that was the thing that really carried me through that you didn't really see on the show, but that willingness to just work hard, stay organized, create these charts, stay on top of people, and provide some organization when I couldn't be the one leading or be in an area of my expertise. I could always still find a way to add value. And I think, that's one of the things too, when I look at a show or when you look on something where it's like, hey, if I'm not the star on a show, or if I'm not the host or it's someone else's thing, then it's like, how can I add value to them and what they're doing? Right. And try to figure out what they're doing and make them better. And in so doing, you make everything better. And it's one of those things where you don't always, it's like when you're on a team, you don't need to be the guy scoring 30 points. Sometimes your job is going to be do the assists, get the rebounds, and being able to say, I can try to lead a show. I can be the host on Ninja, or, I've been on other shows where, hey man, I'm an ensemble member and I have no problem sharing the spotlight and doing that as well. And knowing kind of these different roles. And again, there are other people who are like, no, I'm always going to be the star, and that works for them. Mm-hmm. But I've found a little more utility in saying I can step into areas and sometimes be a second fiddle and know how to deliver in that area as well. And I thought it was really fun going on Apprentice because you got to see how people worked and how some people didn't want to work in areas where it wasn't their area of expertise, and to say, I can always add value and to see that when you do that, people will notice. And that was why I was only ever up for being fired in the very final week when there were just two of us. And every other time I'd always stayed out of the boardroom or my teams had won. And I think that I'd been a part of that. And it was because I'll just do this work and keep us organized. We'll never miss a deadline. We'll always have the resources. We'll always know who's doing what. We'll always know exactly what criteria we're being judged on. So we're not missing the target here. And it's these little things that you can really add value in different ways if you're looking to do it.
Yeah. And it's a little counterintuitive too, but it's like sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to be selfless, right? Yeah. And just and take your ego out of it and say, look.
Because it's like, hey, rather than be like the star, I want my team to win. Because if my team wins, nobody's getting fired. And if that means someone else is shining, if I make them shine, that's great. Because ultimately, people do notice it. People notice, and then they'll notice if you're not doing it. And it is one of those things I think about, wanting the best result, not necessarily for yourself, but for the team, for the project. Ultimately, I think that ends up getting you the best results, because people don't always look for just a shining star. They look for someone who makes everyone better. You're right. You want a guy who elevates the team and trying to do that, because there's no project that hinges around one person. Mm-hmm. Even if you see like Colbert, there's a team of writers, there are other people. And if you can bring the best out of them, that helps you. And figuring out how you do that, how you bring the best out of other people. And learn what people respond to. And it's, that's an ongoing that's a process where you're always evolving and always trying to do it. But it was, that was what I loved about Apprentice. We did it in 6 weeks. We did 13 tasks in 6 weeks. And it was the most intense thing I've done since medical school. And it was the most fun and rewarding thing. And it was so fun to feel like I worked my ass off and it paid off.
Yeah.
And it got noticed, and it's resulted in this ridiculous friendship with Arnold. Like, what an experience.
That's amazing. Well, and so I feel like this does not get mentioned enough, but you now are doing the announcing for the Arnold Classic.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of Strongman. I mean, I'll go down into my basement in my home gym and I'll watch like the World's Strongest Man from the 70s through the 80s, just all the I love it. And so I was watching Arnold, and then you pop on, and I was like, this guy is everywhere.
My co-host this past year was Magnus Ver Magnusson, who when I was in college, Iceland, he was, from Iceland, he was Big Von Big, the world's strongest man. And I'm, and that's again with Arnold, where we're out there with these strong men, and it was, Thor, Hafthor Bjornsson, the mountain from Game of Thrones, and Brian Shaw, and these guys, and they're just gentleman beasts. And it's so much fun. And Arnold, he likes me as a host. So he gave me kind of, the pro unlimited bodybuilding and the strongman, the two biggest events. And the Arnold Classic, it's like 250,000 fans over 3 days, 21,000 athletes.
Huge.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And, he gave me the keys to like the biggest franchise. And it's so much fun. And again, I did my homework. I learned about these guys. I learned about the lifts as much as possible. And I knew what I didn't know. And I'd lean on Magnus for that. But I came in and I'm like, I learned how to say their names because some of them are just absurd.
Dude,
I learned, I just learned as much as I could because I knew, hey, this is a very specialized world and I want to respect it. And like the athletes were very kind, and I think they sensed that I wanted to do the best job I could. And they were very, very open to have me there. And it was, it's just when you're sitting there, and if you watch Conan the Barbarian, they recreated the Wheel of Doom, this 35-foot wooden structure that they're pushing. And you're there watching it, just going, these guys are moving buildings. They are moving strength. Oh, the feats of strength were remarkable. And it's, again, like that's what I love with Ninja Warrior. That's what I love with anything. I love watching people do extraordinary things, do things they didn't know they could do.
Right.
And that's Strongman in a nutshell. And it's so much fun to get to do that and to have Arnold come up at the end and just be BSing with him with these, the literal strongest men on the planet.
Yeah. Exactly. The strongest men that have ever lived.
Ever. And they really are, right? Obviously, they are the strongest men who've ever lived. And it is absurd. Like you get on the bus, you feel them, like we're talking like a full Greyhound bus. When they get on, the whole bus tilts as they're walking down.
Start testing the shocks.
Oh my God.
Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you, have you ever taken a run through the American Ninja Warrior course?
Yeah.
How'd it go?
Not well. Not well. The last 2 times I broke my foot and broke my ankle.
Really?
And they were like, you can't do it anymore. I go, no, I can't. In fact, if you see me look at an obstacle, you have permission to tackle me. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so my bones are like Rice Krispies. They really shouldn't be doing it. And I'm not, I'm not a small, lithe athlete. I'm bigger and huskier. And so, yeah, it is awful. These athletes are remarkable. Unlike strongman, where you see it is this burly strength, this is strength to weight, where 150-pound people who can do 40 pull-ups or dead hang for half an hour, and it's a different kind of strength, and it is amazing. So we shot our most recent season during this pandemic. We got delayed. We were ready to start in March 12th. And the day before was March 11th. NBA canceled games. March Madness gets canceled. And so our season goes from, we were 24 hours away, full go, to by the end of that day, hey, not only are we postponed, we don't know if it's happening. It took 4 months. We go to St. Louis. We shoot at the Dome at America Center where the Rams used to play. We figured out a way where 80,000 seat Dome, 0 fans. We could only have 3 ninjas on the course at once.
Yeah.
And, you're thinking it's going to be empty. It's going to have this horrible energy. But everyone was so excited, myself included, to be out of the house. This was July. So this is the first time I'd really left the house.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're there. We still have our full crew, but it's because it's the Dome. We could essentially have people outside indoors. They were effectively outside in distance, like our whole control team. We're in this Dome, and the energy there, it was just this crazy, like, are we going to pull this off? Is it going to work? We're so lucky to get to do it. The energy was crazy. And we did this whole season, but a lot of the athletes, the gyms were closed. They couldn't work out. And so they're out there and some of them hadn't worked. You know, they were doing pull-ups in their garage, whatever. But the course was as difficult as it's ever been, and they found a way through it. And it was just amazing to see people rising to the occasion. And, you know, we also had an opportunity this year. We always have a lot of frontline workers, firefighters and cops and nurses, and to have these people coming out there. And, you know, we had an ICU nurse, and her doctors, you know, they took a break and they were watching her run from the hospital. And, you know, 4 days before, she was in the ICU, life or death situations, and here she is on the course. And, you know, she had to go back, and it was just amazing, though, to feel like we pulled it off. So it was a different, totally different season, but it was one of the greatest experiences we've had on the show, because it meant so much to get to actually get to do it in the midst of all this.
Yeah. Well, and that's
I didn't go near the obstacles.
Okay.
Not even close.
That's one of the things that just like sport brings out. It's like these human stories that are so incredible.
I look at it and I think like the lessons of sport are the lessons of life. Like learning how to lose, learning how to work hard, learning that you might suck at something, but if you work and work and work, you get better. Yeah. Learning how to take criticism from a coach, learning how to be a teammate. All those things you learn in sport, I think, are the lessons that make you a better human. And I look at our ninjas, and I think I see how so many of them have used ninja to turn their lives around and to overcome addiction or to battle disease or to use it as a way to deal with the frustrations of life. And these people, in working hard physically and having that discipline, it carries over to other areas of their life. And you just see having that, you know, having something like that, having a goal that you go after, I think is so important in life. To have something where you're challenging yourself to be better than the day before, because it's so easy to just kind of put your head down and go, hey man, I'm just one day after the other. It happens. We do that. And you know, in the pandemic, it's easy to do it, but to sometimes step back and say, well, why am I doing this? What's the next step, or what's the purpose of working hard for this? And I think ninja, you know, seeing these athletes do it, and I think when they see what they've done on the course, you just see these people who have so much success in other areas. You know, maybe that was who they were, but a lot of them, I think they felt like having that ability in ninja, and then they saw, wow, if I can do this here, I can translate it in other areas. And it's been amazing seeing so many of them have success and find marriage and find happiness. And, you know, to think that their work on ninja and their success in ninja was a part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't help but have that bleed into the other parts of your life.
Yeah.
Right. The work ethic, the determination,
I just think,
like that positive feedback loop. It's like,
absolutely. I think it's so great for kids to play sports for that reason. Just to learn those lessons and to see that, whether you're good at it or not. I think it's just kind of one of those things that it allows you to handle the challenges of life better.
For sure. Awesome. Well, hey, maybe we can wrap it up with this, but I know that you do, and you've mentioned it already, a lot of philanthropic work.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about like some of the causes? You mentioned the rheumatoid arthritis is something that
so the Arthritis Foundation has been my main charity. That's been one I've worked with. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so it's kind of self-serving, I guess. But the Arthritis Foundation really helped me when I was diagnosed. Just getting, you know, the biggest thing it gave me was a connection to people who had what I have. Because it's funny, as a doctor, I understood rheumatoid arthritis, but I didn't know what it was like living with it. And when I was diagnosed, I kind of understood the science, but I didn't know. I wanted to talk to people who had it, who could tell me this is how life changes. And the Arthritis Foundation helped me with that. And that's been one of the reasons why I've always been open about living with rheumatoid arthritis and sharing my story. Was when I was diagnosed, I didn't, you know, it's primarily women's disease, and it tends to affect women often, you know, in their later stages of life, kind of close to the age I am now.
I didn't realize.
And so there weren't a lot of people like me, a lot of young guys out there. And I thought, if there's a young guy, I want them to know, hey, I'm out here, and you wouldn't necessarily know it by looking at me that I have this. I'm on, you know, a show where the show is very active, even if I'm not.
Yeah.
And to say like, hey, because what I found is when you read about a diagnosis or a disease, you read the textbook cases, and those are often the worst ones, the ones that are most physically deforming. You don't read about hey, I'm living with it, I'm controlled. Just yesterday, I got my infusion. I was in the hospital for 3 hours. I got my medicine, and I'm good for 10 weeks. And
oh, wow.
And so, you know, my life has adapted. It's not what it was before, but it's very, you know, I lead a full active life with RA. So the Arthritis Foundation was really important for me. I had kidney cancer. I had cancer on my left kidney in 2007. I was lucky. They found it because of the RA. They were doing a test. They found this tumor very early, so it was removed. And that was it. I didn't have to have chemo. And I reached 10 years, so I'm considered cured. But I work with the American Cancer Society because of that, because that was blind luck. Otherwise, I might have, if I didn't have RA, the cancer might have killed me. So I work with the American Cancer Society. I have a good friend who has 2 kids with cystic fibrosis. So I've become involved with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I got involved with Operation Smile, who works with children with cleft palates through Apprentice, and have worked with that. Arnold Schwarzenegger has the After School All-Stars, and he's got me doing a ton of work with them. We've done quite a few fundraisers with them as well. I work with the Armed Services Arts Partnership. I'm an ambassador, and their goal is to use comedy, music, storytelling to help troops transition back from the military into civilian life. And that was something where I'd done comedy. One of my friends was a Navy vet. We'd done shows for the troops, and they just reached out and asked me to do a show, and I saw the impact it was having. And again, like what they ask of me is not much, these charities. And it's an honor to get to work with them. And, you know, I'm lucky that I get to work with some awesome charities and feel like I make a difference. But, you know, I'm not the person who's necessarily in there day in and day out doing the fundraising, but I get to try to do things that hopefully are a little more high impact and raising awareness. And it's lucky. And I think I just have an appreciation for, look, what I do is ridiculous. I talk about ninjas. I tell jokes. I hang out with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So if I have a chance to try to give back and, you know, think of medicine in a way of helping people, to help them through some of the charitable work, you know, it is, as Brian Regan would say, the least I can do. It's a very small sacrifice to get to do it. And again, when you do it, you get to feel unreasonably good about yourself for helping others. So it's, you know, it's kind of a selfish, you know, it's still, I think I still get more than I give for sure in doing it with those charities. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you're obviously incredibly humble. But you know,
I'm not that humble. Ask my mom. I think I'm awesome. Ken. I tell everyone.
No, but with everything that you go on, I mean, just, you know, the rap sheet of charitable organizations that you partner with in some way, I think is one, you know, thank you, because I think more people with a platform, you know, could probably do more to help others in need. But I also think, you know, like you said, like you get more out of it than maybe you put in, right? Because there's something about like giving back in some way, big or small, that like you walk away better for it.
Yeah. And again, look, I left medicine. Medicine is a noble profession.
Right.
I do a navel-gazing, self-centered profession where we get paid a lot of money to have people watch us on TV. It is probably an unhealthy self-fascination, which may explain why I'm not married and don't have kids. But so yeah, getting to do some of that is you know, you try to balance it, and it's awesome. I think every day I'm so glad I made the choice to get to do what I do. I'm glad that I've had the success that I've had and the opportunities that I've had. It's ridiculous. It is. I'm sitting in a room filled with trinkets and souvenirs and memorabilia from things that I never, you know, thought possible. And it's. I think one of the things is I really do have a healthy appreciation for it. I know I'm lucky, and I'm so glad with the stuff. And I appreciate it. I never want to take it for granted.
Yeah.
How much fun some of the things I get to do are.
Oh, it's great, man. Gratitude, folks. Gratitude.
Yes.
Listen up. Well, okay. Last question. We can end on this one. You know, you've got a lot going on. There's a lot in the cooker already. Is there anything right now that's on your radar that you're excited about as far as projects in the future, things that you want to get into? So it doesn't even have to be related to entertainment. Okay.
Factorious, the podcast game show I do every Tuesday when a new episode drops. It was a game show initially created for TV, but when the podcast boom hit, they're like, hey, this show could be played with audio only. So we've done it. It's doing well. We're actually going to try to do a TV version of it.
Oh, very cool.
I love games. I love playing games. So to be able to host a TV game show, the podcast game show has been a blast, but there's something about having grown up watching The Price is Right, Sale of the Century,
Yeah.
Wheel of Fortune, Joker's Wild, all that, to be able to be like Gene Rayburn with the long microphone, the thought of being a game show host, I don't know. It's
iconic.
It's iconic. It would really be cool to get to do that.
I also
and then
grew
the
up
Olympics.
watching the game show network.
Oh yeah,
So
I love playing. I love playing games and like hosting it and feeling like you get to set it up and draw the drama out and have a little fun. And then the Olympics, like working the Olympics is something where, you know, as an athlete and who grew up with all the, you know, getting to watch like Carl Lewis in '84 and so many iconic moments and to think like, hey, I'm gonna hopefully get to go to Tokyo, be there for the whole time and meet the athletes and be a part of this and be a part of something where, you know, for these athletes, that's their whole lives have led to this one moment, this one performance, and to get to be around them for that and talk to them. I think that will be something special. It's the world's, you know, it's going to be the world's platform, especially given what's gone on if the Olympics actually happen. I think to be there after however the pandemic is, if we actually get to do it, I think that will be another just career defining highlight, just an awesome moment. So I'm hoping that all happens.
Awesome. Well, hey man, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
A blast, Ken. I really enjoyed it.
I know. I'm inspired.
See, look at this. You have me talk about myself, the really humble guy. Just, I'll keep going. I got more me. It's awful.
I know it's night over here, and now I'm like, what am I going to do? I got to go accomplish. I got to go push my comfort zone. But no, this was great. And so I know there's a lot of folks who probably already watch you. But for those who would like to follow you, where can I direct
Twitter, them? Instagram, Facebook, all at Matt Iseman, MATTISEMAN. American Ninja Warriors on Monday nights. We got a few more weeks. Factorious every Tuesday, live rescue every Friday and Saturday on A&E. We're following the first responders. And then hopefully some more projects coming out. I'm on 25 words or less every so often. So check it all out. I'm having so much fun and so much fun. I'm loving it. So check it out.
Awesome.
And McDonald's can sponsor. I'm loving it.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll try and get them as a sponsor.
Right. Attaboy.
Well, hey, I appreciate it, Matt.
Thanks, Ken.